Halo is a very important video game franchise for me. I've been a die-hard fan of the games ever since I could hold a controller, putting hundreds if not thousands of hours into each of them. Some of these games I will love till the end of time, and honestly some of them I kinda consider bastard childs. But even then, I still consider all the games a success in their own way. Some just succeed more than others. So I'm gonna go through all the games except mobile games and Halo Wars. So that includes Combat Evolved 2, 3, Reach, ODST, 4, and 5. So let's get right into it because obviously I have a lot to talk about this video and I don't want it to be 5 hours long. So let's start by bringing you back to 2001. The World Trade Center just fell. Everyone's pretty fucking bummed to say the least, but you do hear about this new video game console that Microsoft is releasing called the Xbox.
Greetings, Master. I am Crusher, Master of Kung Fu. Master of Kung Fu.
Lord Master of Monkey Poo.
So to get away from the constant worry the country is going through right now, you decide to pick one up. And what game do you get with it? Well, one stood out in your mind, and that one was Halo Combat Evolved. To be fair, what else were you gonna get? Were you gonna get Shrek? Huh? So you load up the game, and as soon as you get to the main menu, you know you're in for something special. This main menu helps showcase one of Halo's strongest aspects, and that would be its soundtrack. I don't want to spend this whole video jerking off Marty O'Donnell, but I gotta say the man's a genius. He's produced some of the most iconic themes in video game history, and for good reason. This soundtrack is so fucking epic. And once you're done staring at the menu and ogling at the music, you start up the campaign.
Cortana, all I need to know is, did we lose them?
I think we both know the answer to that.
I absolutely adore this opening scene. It establishes everything we need to know in just a short amount of time. It's like, hey, this alien world, this human, this robot lady, go. And something you'll immediately notice about Halo's cutscenes is the way the cameras are used. Now, outside of games like Metal Gear Solid, cinematography definitely was not one of gaming's strong suits back in the day. But Halo instantly comes in and gives some more interesting angles and some more interesting depth to the cinematics, and I think is one of the major reasons Halo has always been praised for its story. They sure know how to tell it through cinematics. I also really like how they use this cutscene to build up more mystery around the Covenant, and I like how this is built up to a gameplay surprise and not something we just see in a cutscene. Speaking of the gameplay, let's talk about it. So on the first level, the Pillar of Autumn, it's designed more like your standard corridor shooter. Yes, the environments are very familiar, and this can seem almost bland at first glance, but this was a huge shift for console shooters at the time. Most console shooters at the time featured some sort of lock-on mechanic or just aimed for you, but in Halo, all that was thrown away. There is auto-aim, and it's incredibly subtle. You can barely notice it while playing the game, which makes the gameplay more satisfying because the player feels as if they did it all by themselves without having some sort of lock-on mechanic. The enemy AI is incredibly smart, especially on harder difficulties. They'll use complex maneuvers and strategies to try and throw you off, and they always make sure they put up one hell of a fight. But the player is unaware that they have only touched the tip of the iceberg, and their preconceptions on what this game will be just from the first level were about to drown. So when you finally find an escape pod off the Pillar of Autumn, your player character, Master Chief, and his AI construct Cortana escape onto this mysterious ring world. And this is where we are introduced to the game's second level, Halo.
We're coming in too fast! Damn! Air brake failure! They blew too early! I'm losing her! Brace for impact!
This is the moment where console shooters changed forever. Now, some of you may disagree with me, but I personally think Halo is possibly one of the greatest video game levels of all time. It instantly introduces you to this wide open space, a stark contrast between the tight corridors of the last level. And the level instantly faces you with a dilemma. Do you take the mountains and try to avoid the incoming enemies, or do you stay and fight to hopefully try and avoid the possibility of fighting them at some later point? This is just a little taste at the partially non-linear way that Halo tackles objectives. And then the game instantly introduces you to a more complicated version of this structure. After defending a bunch of Marines that came down in drop pods, you see 3 more drop pods fall down in the sky, and then you are told to go save them. But the order you save them in is completely up to you. Cortana doesn't just pop up and say, "Hey Chief, you can only do the objectives in this specific order." Okay, but why? Because of the story, dickhead! Oh god, contain yourself, Jobert, please, for Christ's sakes. You can do the Force skits and Force memes later. Oh god, let me get back on topic real quick. So to help you with your objective, the Marines gave you the star of the level, the motherfucking Warthog. There's a really good reason why this thing is an icon in gaming now, because this thing is so fun to drive. Holy shit. Like, it's really hard to describe, but it's just so fun. It's just You then spend the rest of the mission trying to rescue the rest of the Marines, and you get a sense of just how massive not only the levels are, but the sandbox. You get introduced to so many ways of combat and so many weapons in this level. This level really does exceed at giving you an idea at the scale of the game. This level also provides a wide variety of environments to play in, whether that be mountainous regions perfect for sniping, or clear and open grasslands, or even underground tunnels to traverse through. This is the perfect introduction to Halo. Once you complete your objective, you are picked up and then sent to your next mission, Truth and Reconciliation. Your objective of this mission is to rescue Captain Keyes, who is aboard the Truth and Reconciliation, a Covenant ship. So after you get through the first part of the level, which was clearly intended to be some sort of sniping mission, but I think most players just ran straight through, you get to this grav lift and you go inside this Covenant ship. And it's a reversal of the Pillar of Autumn. Instead of having your ship invaded, you're invading a Covenant ship, which is kind of a cool experience. There's a really cool introduction to an enemy as soon as you get inside the ship, and that's the Invisible Sword Elite. You get no indication that it's in your area besides the sounds that it makes and the menacing glow of the energy sword, until you learn that they're the easiest motherfuckers to kill on the entire planet. Oh boy, am I a member of FaZe Clan yet? Am I allowed to make incredibly shitty clickbaity content yet? Oh boy. So we get through the rest of the level, and honestly, the rest of the level is just kinda okay. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad level. There's other levels that are much worse than this one. But to me, going through the same corridor for about 20 minutes is not really fun to me. Now, don't get me wrong, the Pillar of Autumn also had this problem, but the Pillar of Autumn is so short that it didn't even really matter. But oh boy, we could go and save Captain Keyes, and oh wait, that's not Captain Keyes, it's Captain Exposition.
The Covenant kept saying that whoever controls Halo controls the fate of the universe.
But they must be looking for Halo's control room.
That's bad news. If Halo is a weapon, and the Covenant gain control of it, they'll use it against us and wipe out the entire human race.
The Halo games usually have a problem with this. They usually have one giant scene that's a huge exposition dump on you, instead of, say, drip feeding us information along the way. And personally, I feel like that approach would have worked out better, especially in Combat Evolved. It would have helped enhance sort of the mystery of Halo, and every little bit that we find kind of unfolds this massive story. But we follow Captain Keyes' orders, and we are led to the star level of the game, the Silent Cartographer. If Halo was the perfect introduction to, well, Halo, then the Silent Cartographer is the perfect showcase for Halo. Very wide open arenas for vehicles, a large amount of gauntlets of enemies to fight through in a wide variety of environments, and an open-ended level structure to top it all off. Make this one of the greatest video game levels ever made. But unfortunately, this is where the game peaks. The following level, Assault on the Control Room, is good, but it's not great. Players start to get a real feel for the copy-paste level design in this level by fighting in the same room about 9 times and going through the same hallway over and over and over again. The encounters just become repetitive after a while, and while yes, they're fun encounters, and it's really not all doom and gloom for the game beyond this point, but it's definitely a step down from the masterwork we got before. But unfortunately, this is not as low as the game stoops. These next few levels you play through are a bit rocky, starting with 343 Guilty Spark. So once you reach the control room, Cortana tells you that Captain Keyes is in danger. Exactly what danger she doesn't really specify. But Chief just follows along and is just like, okay, I'll do that. And we are led to a level that I am very conflicted on. On one hand, I really do admire 343 Guilty Spark's storytelling elements. The reveal of the flood is especially effective. After this cutscene, which I honestly think is just okay, it's not really amazing or a piece of art or something like that, but the way the flood just pound on the door after the cutscene is really effective and really sucks the player in. The actual gameplay though is kinda boring, and the level is extremely confusing because almost every room looks exactly the same. You just run in aimless directions until you find the finish line. It's not too bad. You have a fun time fighting the flood, even though their AI is pretty simplistic, and even though the level can feel like a maze at sometimes, you can get out of there relatively quickly. But this leads to possibly one of the most jarring points in the game. So randomly, these robots start flying out of the air. They're not attacking you, so obviously they're not hostile, but they're just kind of there. Then randomly, boom! You're teleported in to 343 Guilty Spark. And he explains to you that, oh, we're trying to stop the flood. Come with us, help us stop the flood. And here's a rule of thumb, never trust this fucker. And one of the reasons you shouldn't trust him is he takes you to the worst level in the entire game. But hey, it can't be that bad, right? Jesus Christ, how many flood are there? Spark, I've been waiting here for like 20 minutes, come on! How many times do I have to go down the same corridor? There really isn't much to say about this level. It's just bad. Like, it's really terrible. So after completing that thing, we are teleported back to the control room. It is revealed to us that Halo is not a weapon to stop the flood and to think that we think it would stop the flood. Instead, it would kill all sentient life within the galaxy, therefore killing its food supply. So then when you refuse to activate the Halo ring, Guilty Spark turns on you, and the next mission, 2 Betrayals, starts. Alright, Polly, put up the footage of the next mission, 2 Betrayals. Oh hey, why are you playing Assault on the Control Room in reverse? Oh wait, that's what 2 Betrayals is. How did the level design stoop this low to the point where they're reusing entire levels, even when they weren't great levels to begin with? And to top this cherry off, this copy-pasted level is the one where copy-paste level design is the biggest problem. It's just multiple layers of repetitiveness. Oh hey, and to make things all better, here's the stupidest cutscene in the entire game.
There's a teleportation grid that runs throughout Halo. That's how the monitor moves about so quickly. I learned how to tap into the grid when I was in the control center. Unfortunately, each jump requires a rather consequential expenditure of energy.
Something tells me I'm not gonna like this.
But I'm pretty sure I can pull it from your suit without permanently damaging your shields. Needless to say, I think we should only try this once.
What? Cortana could just teleport now? Okay, like I can get 343 Guilty Spark being able to teleport, because he's like ancient alien technology and stuff like that. Like I can buy that. But Cortana being able to teleport, and especially being able to teleport the Chief, that is just, no, I can't buy that bullshit. So then the next mission starts up, which is called Keyes. We get a transmission from, you guess it, Captain Keyes, and we try to rescue him from this ship. Oh, and hey, it's just Truth and Reconciliation again. Oh boy. But there is actually a really cool section in this mission, and I think one of the most underrated parts of Halo's level design. This is one of the only missions where you get to be between the crossfire of both the Flood and the Covenant, and having the ability to just completely escape because the Flood's attention is on the Covenant and the Covenant's attention is on the Flood, or even interfering in this battle. But it doesn't last too long because you go back in the ship and it's still Truth and Reconciliation. But then we meet up with Captain Keyes, and oh god, he's the Flood grandpa. And then we punch him in the face and we get Keyes' keys. And then we head back to the Pillar of Autumn and the final mission begins. The Maw is, well, just the Pillar of Autumn again. So we go into the engine room and we throw a bunch of grenades at these things until they explode. Then the self-destruct sequence of the Pillar of Autumn has begun. You head up this elevator and then this incredible sequence happens where you have to escape the Pillar of Autumn on your Warthog. And it is just so enthralling every single time you play it. It's honestly a moment that I could consider to be one of the standout points of the game. So once you've gotten to the ship, you fly off and then you watch the Halo ring explode. And then a bunch of setup for Halo 2 happens.
Halo, it's finished.
No, I think we're just getting started.
So that was Halo 1, a very flawed but good game. It had such an excellent first half, but the second half of the game kinda holds it back from greatness. But it is truly a solid game and I would definitely recommend playing it. Well, I feel like I forgot something. Oh yeah, that's right, multiplayer. There really isn't too much to say about the multiplayer in Halo 1. It's got a series of good maps, the gameplay mechanics work together, and I think the addition of Xbox Live in the Master Chief Collection works pretty well most of the time. The only real problem we could talk about is the almighty pistol, which could quickly make some games not really too enjoyable, especially for new players. The rule with the pistol is basically 3 headshots and you're dead. It doesn't matter what distance you're at, you're dead. And this could be very frustrating to new players who don't exactly know this. And this to me is one of the reasons why I find big team battle games a lot more entertaining on Halo CE, because all these close quarters maps are usually just pistol fests. But with the addition of a few vehicles, you can get a really fun game going. So that's Halo 1. It was a very successful game. It almost single-handedly made Xbox a household name. And of course, with great success comes great expectations, and that's what people had for Bungie's next project, Halo 2. But what people were unaware of, that Halo 2 was the definition of development hell.
What if you miss?
I won't.
I don't want to focus too much on Halo 2's development cycle, but I will point it out when it's very apparent that content was cut from the game. And yes, the Halo 2 portion of the review is going to use gameplay from the remastered version of Halo 2. I didn't use gameplay for the remastered version of Halo CE, because personally I think the Halo CE remastered version looks very messy. But the remastered version of Halo 2 looks way better, so I will be using gameplay for that. Halo 2 starts off with this opening cinematic, showing the destroyed Halo ring from the first game, and then immediately a Covenant cruiser passing by, revealing a whole fleet of Covenant cruisers surrounding the Covenant homeworld. This is already reinforcing the idea that Halo 2 is a much bigger game. Why are we seeing this Covenant holy city, you ask? Well, this is the point where we're introduced to a new character in the franchise. A character that was divisive at the time, to say the least. But basically, this was an elite general, and since he has failed to protect the Halo ring and let the Master Chief explode it, he is being reprimanded for this, and all the punishment is falling on him. I actually really like this idea, but in execution it falls a little weak. See, we're given no reason to actually like care about this guy, so really, who cares? How many elites did we even kill in the last game? What makes this guy any different? Maybe if there was some sort of prologue sequence that took place during the events of Halo 1 where you actually played as this guy, and we actually got a reason to care about him and we got attached to him, then maybe this sequence could be a lot more impactful. Realizing that our own actions as the player have caused this character that we kind of like to be reprimanded and just be hated by his own people. But unfortunately we don't have that. So unfortunately we just have a cutscene that I bet most people just press the skip button on, honestly. But people who sat through this cutscene were rewarded by seeing the Chief's new getup. And oh my god, does it look so much cooler than the original armor. Like, I know they just took the original armor and just made it a little more thick, but it just looks so much cooler. And yeah, Cortana has tits and ass now, but who the fuck cares?
Is that sexual harassment?
No, Deadbeam. So you start off on the first level, and I hesitate to call it a level because really all you're doing is just walking around this tram. But this level does introduce one aspect of the story that I think this game did extremely well. Sergeant Johnson's transition to an actual cinematic character. He was more kind of someone on the sidelines in Halo 1, but in Halo 2 he has made his own full cinematic character as sort of this badass slash comic relief character, and I think it works out extremely well. He has some of my favorite lines in the game.
Collectively, the 7. Not another word.
Please, don't shake the light bulb.
It's kind of what I like about the stories of these games. They don't take themselves seriously and they're just really fun. So both the Chief and Johnson attend this award ceremony. They're also accompanied by Miranda Keyes, Captain Keyes' daughter, which is kind of awkward considering we literally punched a hole in her dad's face and took out a piece of his brain in the last game. But all of a sudden, during the award ceremony, boom, a Covenant fleet shows up, which immediately sets up the perfect scenario for the game. The Covenant discovering Earth and launching a full-on assault on the planet, leaving you as its one defender. Holy shit, this is gonna be awesome. But there's a line that they shove in there, that the fleet is really small, at least compared to what would be needed to destroy a planet.
Something's not right. The fleet that destroyed Reach was 50 times this size.
This is your first warning. As to what it's a warning towards, I will be talking about later. But hey, let's get to the fun stuff. Kicking the shit out of a bunch of aliens. Halo 2 is surprisingly different from Halo 1. While Halo 1 was, yes, a little slow, and felt kind of floaty at times, especially with that jump, Halo 2 is much more grounded, is much faster, and is way more aggressive. The main reason for this is that they removed the health bar. You only have shields now, and they're pretty weak, but they do recharge pretty fast. So you have to be really aggressive with your playstyle, because you can die in probably about 3 hits in this game on harder difficulties, making this easily one of the hardest Halo games out there. Hell, I only played on Heroic, but on Legendary, some parts of this game just become downright bullshit. Another big thing in Halo 2 that's changed is its arsenal. The BR, or Battle Rifle as it's known, is the new staple weapon of the game. This thing can basically be used in any situation, long range, medium range, and even short range. Weaker enemies can be knocked out on like one headshot with this thing, and elites only take about a melee or 2 and shot to the head and they're dead. One other big thing they added to the arsenal of Halo 2 is a game mechanic called dual wielding. This basically allows you to carry 2 guns, and while it's inaccurate as all hell, it's pretty fucking awesome. You'll also notice that the assault rifle is completely gone. They've pretty much replaced it with the SMG, which is basically a faster, less accurate version of the assault rifle. I guess they wanted to put more emphasis on dual wielding, so I guess it kind of makes sense why they'd get rid of the assault rifle. One thing about Halo 2's arsenal though, the Magnum was pretty much nerfed to the point of being useless, which thank god having both the BR and the Halo 1 pistol in the same game would be a fucking nightmare, but I kinda wish they didn't make it straight up useless. So after you make it through this first level, you find out that the Covenant have a bomb on this station, so you go and deactivate it. This then leads into one of the most ridiculous cutscenes I've seen in a video game, and it's fucking hilarious.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Permission granted.
The Chief basically single-handedly destroys an entire Covenant cruiser, never missing a beat and doing everything pretty much perfectly. But you may notice, hey, this kind of looks a lot like the Halo 2 announcement trailer. And yes, you'd be right, except there isn't a bomb in that announcement trailer. This is because originally there was supposed to be a level after this one called Covenant Ship, where the Master Chief would go inside this Covenant ship and rip it apart from the inside, rather than just blowing it up with a bomb in a cutscene. While this level would have been really cool and would have been really fun, I gotta agree with the Bungie staff on this one.
Well, I figure if you're gonna cut a level, this is the way to cut it. I won't.
By creating just as much work.
So with that, we head on to our next mission. Our objective, defend Earth. For 2 missions, that is. At least these 2 levels are pretty good. Outskirts, though, has its pitfalls. This is the level where Halo 2 basically takes a problem from Halo CE, but flips it on its head. See, in Halo CE, you were faced with seemingly endless waves of the same room over and over and over again. But in Halo 2, now you're trapped in one room, having to fight through seemingly endless waves of enemies over and over and over again. While yes, this does keep the level design a bit more varied, it can also get very tedious having to fight endless waves of enemies over and over and over again, seemingly for no reason. And I think the one on Outskirts is a perfect example for this. We really don't have much reason for defending this little building here. We just sit here, kill Covenant until 2 hunters break the door, kill them, and then walk through the doors. It's like, why didn't we leave before then? We literally just spent like 10 minutes there for nothing. Not to mention, after that, there's this bullshit section where you are forced to go down this narrow hallway filled with a bunch of snipers that can easily kill you in one hit. Not to mention there being some invisible sword elites running around. So not only do you have to constantly be moving to avoid the snipers, you also have to constantly be looking around you to see if an invisible sword elite is nearby. So yay, that's fun. The level does pick up a little bit once you get to this vehicle section and assault this beach. It's the Halo you know and love, which there's definitely not a problem with that. But problems definitely do arise when you get to this little tunnel section. Unless you have the Warthog, this section basically arises down to hold the boost button on the Ghost and just hope you don't die. There are so many enemies, it's almost impossible to take them all on. So you're basically just hoping you can get the perfect run and not get that one unlucky hit and have to start all over. Which that can get pretty tedious at times. It's a whole other story if you have the Warthog. With that, you'd have to rely on the AI to kill all the enemies for you, which never rely on the AI to do anything for you. But we are then led to our next mission entitled Metropolis, which thank God this mission is a lot better. In this mission we are tasked with taking on this huge Covenant walker tank. And while this level is very linear and scripted, it's badass as all hell. I just love the feeling of jumping onto this giant tank and just ripping apart the crew inside. But once again, this is the end of the Earth section of Halo 2. So what's the next section of the game? Well, that's where things get a little complicated. In the next cutscene, the Prophets of the Covenant have the Elite from the beginning brought to them. The Elite is told that the terms of his execution have been decided on, but ultimately, the Prophet of Truth has ultimate power here. So Truth provides an alternative in the terms of his execution, by promoting him, giving him the rank of Arbiter. Now unfortunately for the Arbiter, this also gives him the previous Arbiter's armor, which has extremely outdated technology. So basically, Truth is expecting the Arbiter to just die almost immediately, but still be able to contribute to their cause before he dies. And you'll know all this if you didn't skip the cutscene, which I imagine a lot of people did, because once again, it's this alien guy we don't really care about. And boy, were those people in for a huge shock when they skipped the cutscene. Hey, that's a really cool sword I have. Wait a minute, why do I have 3 lizard fingers? So yes, in Halo 2 you play as the Arbiter, and people were losing their shit over this, just because you're playing as a different character. Seriously, going around to any internet forum around the time this game was released, people were freaking the fuck out. So did the Arbiter missions deserve all this hate? Well, let's play the levels and see for ourselves. Now, our main objective in this mission is to assassinate this heretic leader. Now, this is actually a really cool idea, as this heretic leader is speaking the truth about the Halo ring, and how it is a weapon of mass destruction designed to kill every single piece of sentient life in the galaxy. So while the Arbiter is still unaware, the player is aware of the Prophet's complete manipulation of the Covenant, trying to make them believe in this great journey myth. And while I do really like this idea, I don't like the idea of us still fighting Covenant. The point of making us play through a new character is playing with a different perspective, and it's kind of hard to get a different perspective when we're fighting against the same kind of enemies. I'm not saying go all out and have human conflict, but it definitely would have been a refresher if it just wasn't the same Covenant as before. And this level does get back to the Halo 1 tradition of having every single room look exactly the same. It's not like, say, the library where it gets downright confusing where you're going sometimes, but it just has no visual variety. But besides that, the level's fun, and being able to use the energy sword is great. I especially love the little lunge they added to it, making sure they don't have to waste too much time walking all the way over right next to the enemy. But the next level is a different story.
What is it? That stench. I've smelled it before.
The Oracle. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I fucking hate this mission. Pretty much take all the cons of the previous mission and enhance them by 10. Oh, and make the enemies completely unbearable to fight. Yeah, that's right, the Flood are back. Just completely out of nowhere, by the way. They just kind of show up. And it is less fun to fight them in this game than it was in Halo 1. It just feels so sluggish compared to the Covenant. And sometimes even their AI would be a little glitchy and cause some bugs throughout the level. Like this one time, where this sort of preggy flood was hidden upstairs, that you're not supposed to expect a flood to be there. So I was just waiting around the room for the next thing to happen, but I had to kill that one that I couldn't even see. And the elevator. Fuck the elevator. This thing will be the bane of your fucking existence. It just brings the gameplay to an utter halt, just to wait slowly as you fight wave after wave of repetitive enemies. Pretty much every time I play this level, I try to find some sort of shortcut to skip the elevator section, or at least part of it. It's really that bad. This level also introduces boss fights, and the boss fights are just not fun. Especially the one on this level where it just sends out 2 holograms and you have to find the real version of him. And it's just so fucking easy. It's just find the real one, slice him open with your sword, and that's it. But at least now we get to check up on our green friend. So they found another Halo ring. Say what? I know, big fucking shock, right? That in a game called Halo 2, there are 2 Halo rings. Well, the Chief and a squad of ODSTs decide to drop down and drop pods, cause you know that's always been the best strategy for them. It's worked every single time. And you basically invade this structure that the Covenant have taken over once you get to the surface. And it's actually really fun. It's more that fast-paced on-the-ground gameplay we got from the first mission. And that's the kind of gameplay in this game that I really like. And once we've taken over this structure and we're defending it, we don't defend it for too long to the point where it gets boring. And then Pelican comes, drops off a few vehicles, which is always pretty fun, and we get to explore the rest of the Halo ring. Except this time it's a little more linear than the first game. Like, instead of feeling like a badass cybernetic super soldier, you feel more like you're fulfilling a grocery list. Okay, so did you kill the grunts? Yes. What about the ghost? Yes. What about that big group of enemies in there? Yes. Did you press the button? Yes. Congratulations, now you can extend the bridge and go down this other long, narrow corridor. To be fair, there is a good way to do linearity. Hell, some of my favorite games are extremely linear. But there is also the bad side of linearity, where games literally hold your hand throughout the entire experience. Luckily, I think Halo 2 lands on the better side of the spectrum. Although I would still prefer the game to be more non-linear like Halo 1. It's just a style of gameplay that I personally prefer. But the game is still fun, so it really doesn't bother bother me too much. So as we continue on through the level, we find out that one of the Covenant prophets, the Prophet of Regret, is actually here on the Halo ring. So, of course, we decide to beat the shit out of him, which this results in another boss fight. And while I criticize the last one, this one is actually fun as shit. Mostly because I just like the utter ridiculousness of you just jumping onto his chair and punching him in the fucking face. And the enemies around you provide quite a challenge. So I'd actually say this is one of the highlights of the game for me. But of course, what comes up must come down. And this game comes down hard. So after the Master Chief takes a little nap, we cut back to the Arbiter, and the class struggle that is happening within the Covenant, between the Brutes and the Elites, over the Elites failing to protect the Prophet of Regret. And the Arbiter is given another assignment, to go to the library. Now, calm down, it's not as bad as before. But that doesn't excuse this level from being fucking boring. This level is a frustrating monotony of walking down endless repetitive corridors while fighting boring enemies. Except the one flying thing, I actually think that one's kinda cool actually. And just waiting on these endless platforms. Or waiting to fall down the hole. Or waiting to open the door so you can fall down another hole. This level just feels unnecessary and seems like complete filler. And the level afterwards does not fare any better. The repetitive corridors are gone, but it's a whole level of vehicle combat, which is just so goddamn long that it just gets boring. You need to properly pace your action. You can't just have a whole level of vehicle combat. You gotta mix it up with some variety, and that is what this level is sheerly lacking in. And then we get to the cutscene, and oh no, the Brutes betrayed the Arbiter. Who could have seen this one coming? Don't worry, we're not over yet. Now we gotta talk to the exposition plant. Alright guys, I'm gonna try and make this quick because honestly I don't have too many flaws with the last act of this game. So here we go. So the Arbiter gets pulled down alongside the Master Chief to talk to the Gravemind, the ultimate form of the Flood who only speaks in cryptic rhymes apparently.
You will search one likely spot, and you will search another. Fate had us meet as foes, but this ring will make us brothers.
And the Gravemind basically explains to the Arbiter shit we already know. Halo is a bad thing, Great Journey is a lie, yada 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 yada. We've heard it so many times before. Alright, let's go fucking kill some shit. And the Gravemind sends the two to their own locations to do exactly that. Wait, the Gravemind can fucking teleport people? What? I'm not even gonna spend the time trying to question how or why he could do that, but okay. And the Chief is sent to High Charity, the Covenant Holy City, to look for the sacred icon. What is essentially the key to Halo. And this level is actually really fun. You basically go around this Covenant City and just rip it apart. They even play that Breaking Benjamin song at one point, which is a huge fucking guilty pleasure for me. Yeah, overall this level is actually really fun. It does kind of have that problem of not having a lot of visual variety, but let's face it, a lot of the levels in this game have that, and that's kind of to be expected at this point. One really cool thing about this level though is you get to experience the Covenant Civil War as you're going through the city and fighting all the enemies, because you'll notice that the Brutes and the Elites are fighting each other, and you just get to go through and slaughter them both, which is actually quite a good time. On the Arbiter side of things, we actually get a decent level from him, where basically he reunites with his Elites and takes on the Brutes and tries to stop the Halo ring. This level's pretty fun for the most part. It has a nice mix of vehicle combat and on the ground combat, and what I think is the Arbiter's first incredibly strong level. And then we cut back to the Chief, and then the Flood show up in the Covenant Holy City. Oh my god. And this level's okay. It's actually not as bad as the other Flood levels. Maybe I just prefer how the Master Chief is controlled in Flood combat, but it just doesn't feel as sluggish as when you're fighting the Flood as the Arbiter. And you're basically left with one goal, and that's get the fuck out of there. So you basically run back through High Charity, which is collapsing right before you, get to this little gravity beam, I think, and then just ride on out of there. Then you're in this thing, which I don't even know what the fuck that is. Then Cortana has to be left behind because she wants to detonate the core of a UNSC frigate that just happens to crash here. Kind of like they did in the first game, except it's really just kind of out of nowhere and kind of lazily inserted here. And then we cut back to the Arbiter, who teams up with Sergeant Johnson, and then they both ride together to the control room, where we encounter our final boss fight, Tartarus, the main brute who's been taunting you throughout the game. And this is where things kind of start falling apart. This boss fight really isn't fun, because it mostly relies on the AI of Sergeant Johnson to shoot him with the beam rifle, because Tartarus has this invincibility shield, and the only way to get rid of the invincibility shield is through a few shots with the beam rifle. And Sergeant Johnson's AI is so unreliable that this fight can go on for a long amount of time. You just spend time trying to bait him into Sergeant Johnson's line of sight, but then you kind of have to take a gamble if Sergeant Johnson will even fucking shoot at the dude. So overall, this is kind of a lackluster conclusion to the game, but pretty much everything preceding that from the last act was actually pretty fun and was a decent step up from the levels before. But here's the big one. Here's the big thing everyone fucking hates about this game. So Chief is flying away from High Cherry in that fucking thing he went into, and it makes a portal back to Earth, and then Lord Hood is on the thing from the beginning, and he sees the thing pop in, and he sees the Chief is in there. He's like, yo, Chief, what you doing, man? And he says, sir, finishing this fight. And then it cuts the credits. That's actually that's the end. I really don't even need to explain why this is a really shitty ending. But to be fair, this isn't the worst ending the Halo series has had. But oh god, we're done with Halo 2's campaign. That went on way longer than it should have, and I'm really sorry about that. Now we can talk about the meat and potatoes of Halo 2, the multiplayer. Stop the music. This is all wrong. You're not supposed to do it this way. I'm not gonna tolerate this bullshit, alright? Let's try this again.
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the
Now that might have seemed like a stupid joke that serves no purpose, but that stupid joke was actually very important in setting up one thing: the culture around Halo 2's multiplayer. Halo 2 was probably one of the first console games to do online multiplayer right, with a full set of features, unprecedented for a console game, which are now mainstays in Xbox Live. Things such as friend lists, parties, voice messaging, and even clans. All of this led Halo 2 to be a cultural phenomena. The game was the top of the Xbox Live charts for 2 fucking years. It's impressive for a game to stay on the top of the Xbox Live charts for 2 fucking months now. So it's such an impressive feat that Bungie were able to accomplish all this with the limitations of the original Xbox and the original Xbox Live. Halo 2's multiplayer gave rise to a more competitive nature in gaming, where it'd be as small and simple as getting a little mad in voice chat for not doing too well in a match, or even making a little montage of your personal best moments, or something as large as a full-on TV production of an MLG event, of competitive legends like Ogre 1 and Ogre 2, Walshy and Gandhi facing off against each other. Without a doubt, Halo 2 was definitely a lot of people's introduction to competitive gaming, and paved the way for some certain other competitive shooters. And I think one of the biggest reasons for this would probably be the maps. Halo 2 has some of the best maps in a multiplayer first-person shooter. Classics like Lockout, Midship, Zanzibar, and Ivory Tower are some of the most iconic multiplayer maps in a video game. A lot of the maps in Halo 1 were really flat and boring, and and almost all of them were completely symmetrical, which can get extremely repetitive. But Halo 2 threw in a lot of asymmetrical maps. Hell, in the case of Zanzibar, asymmetrical was the whole point of the map, having one team infiltrate a compound from the beach. This lended a lot more variety to Halo 2, and made sure that at no point no two matches felt the same. My only criticism towards Halo 2's multiplayer is there really isn't a good selection of big team battle maps. Yeah, sure, you got Coagulation and you got Zanzibar, but really what else is there besides that? Everything else just fades into the back of your head and just blends in with everything else. There's not a lot of that iconic map design attached to the big team battle maps, and that's a side of Halo that I personally really enjoy, so it's kind of disappointing for me personally that it's lacking on that department. But really, that's my only criticism of Halo 2's multiplayer. Well, that and some of the bugs that people used were kind of cheap as shit. I'm not gonna into all the button combos and shit, all your BXRs and all that bullshit. I'm sure there's some other video about it, but there were some glitches in this game's multiplayer that people did abuse and use to their advantage to get that level 50 without having to actually work for it. And that's just a shit show no matter what game it is. Besides that, that was Halo 2, often known as the black sheep in the franchise for lore fans, but praised as the best for those who thirst for the multiplayer. I'm someone who personally likes both, and to me, I see this as a step up from the first game in many departments, but a regress in several other. But that doesn't dethrone Halo 2 of its legendary status. It's absolutely a game that anyone should play, and I'm sure anyone would find some aspect to enjoy about it. So, it's a new console generation. Bungie aren't as rushed on their development cycle and have the time they need to create the game that they want to make. And what game did they make? Well, they might have made the greatest game of all time. Now, I don't like sucking dick, but I'm gonna keep this one short. If you couldn't tell already, Halo 3 is probably my favorite game of all time. I find this game near perfect, and any flaws it has I find very minuscule on the overall experience and very easy to forgive. As always, we start with campaign. Halo 3's campaign is an improvement on the previous two in almost every single way. The levels feel a lot larger than Halo 1's, but feel a lot less linear than Halo 2's. You rarely see the copy-paste level design from Halo 1, but you rarely see the wave defense design from Halo 2. There's not as many story cop-outs as there was in the first game. And oh my god, the Flood are actually fun to fight. I can't believe you bastards actually did it. Pull out the party poppers and shit. This is a fucking miracle. Look at this little guy go. Look at him go. Ain't he just a fucking shooter? Oh, okay, now he's dead. Oh god. Speaking of the fighting and the killing, let's talk about that a little bit. Halo 3's gameplay feels like a perfect mesh of Halo 2's and Halo 1's. You don't get as many bullshit deaths as you do in Halo 2, but it's not as slow or floaty as it was in Halo 1. And I'd say it's definitely the perfect balance of Halo gameplay. They've also introduced some new gameplay mechanics such as equipment. These are little things you throw out on the battlefield, whether it be a bubble shield, a regenerator, or the power drain. Now I'm gonna be honest, I don't really use these that much, especially in multiplayer. In fact, I think most game types just straight up take them out, but they're not bad per se. If anything, most of them are just ineffective or delaying the inevitable. Halo 3 also introduced a new class of weapon, and it's what I just call the machine gun class, even though barely any of them are actually machine guns. This is for stuff like the turret when you rip it off its stand, or that huge ass rocket launcher they can carry around and lock on to vehicles, or even a fucking flamethrower. They slow you down quite a bit and have pretty limited ammo, so they're pretty well balanced. They're fun to use, but they don't disrupt the gameplay too much. One of my favorite parts about Halo 3 is its level design. Imagine the level design in Halo 1 for levels like Halo and the Silent Cartographer, but applied to almost every single level. While there isn't necessarily a lot of non-linearity, it feels way more open than the narrow corridors of Halo 2, and in certain cases, like the level of the Covenant, I think does this structure better than any level in Halo 1, because this level is able to pace its action properly, with several sessions of on-the-ground combat and vehicle combat, even one point involving air vehicles, and topping it all off with a gigantic set piece. This level is pretty fantastic. Jobert. Okay, yeah, I know what level you want me to talk about, alright? I'll get to it in a second. Fuck it, let's just talk. just talk about it right now. So Cortana, Halo 3's most hated level. Most people seem to call the level a confusing mess, where every single room looks exactly the same, and while I do agree to a certain extent, I kinda like it. Now maybe it's just because that the Flood are a bit more bearable and actually pretty fun to fight in this game, or that the ending sequence in this level is actually pretty cool, but I will admit this level has several flaws. Like, oh my god, no, not this again, no! Yes, the infamous Cortana transmissions. Now overall I have mixed feelings about these transmissions. Some of them are actually pretty neat, while some of them seem kinda useless. Now the transmissions in this level do have a point, considering how close you are to rescuing Cortana from High Charity, but they appear so much that it just gets fucking infuriating. And then the fucking Gravemind joins in, it's like, hey guys, remember me from Halo 2? And it's just, let me play the fucking game, for Christ's sakes. It's almost like when you're playing a split-screen co-op game, but then your player 2 keeps constantly pressing the pause button just to annoy you. It feels like that, almost. Because these transmissions just get repetitive after a while. Cortana's going crazy, you better save her. I get the point, Bungie, you don't have to keep hammering it in. So one extra thing before I wrap this section up, the art style. I'm a firm holder of the opinion that this game still looks great to this day, and the art style is a major reason for that. The colors are just so warm and inviting, and I've always loved the reflections off the Spartans' visors, and the lighting itself still looks pretty fantastic. And yes, I know 343 tweaked it in the Master Chief Collection, but they didn't even tweak it that much. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Halo 3's campaign. Well, at least all I have to say till it just turns into me sucking a dick for 30 minutes. It's definitely the best out of the trilogy, and probably my favorite single-player campaign to a first-person shooter, but this isn't even my favorite part about Halo 3. The true heart of this game lies in the online. Now Halo 3's matchmaking is practically unchanged from Halo 2, aside from a stronger line of big team battle maps and a bit more party game modes. What really got a major overhaul in Halo 3 was its community features. Let's start with the most obvious. Forge. Forge was a tool created by Bungie that allowed you to create your own maps. And I gotta say, this is probably the best decision Bungie has ever made with the Halo franchise, because it's turned the game from just a competitive shooter to a party game as well. Pairing this along with the in-depth custom games editor, you can make some ridiculously fun games. I remember shit like Duck Hunt, Fat Kid, Tetris, Jenga, and other shit being ridiculously fun. And not only that, but it also allowed pros to create maps for the competitive scene. So really the tool was brilliant and provided some of my favorite moments from Halo 3. Another thing that also peaked in Halo 3 was a little thing called Machinima. This is basically where people would try to make their own little movies inside of Halo 3's engine. And yes, people like Rooster Teeth have done this kind of shit for years before Halo 3's release. But with the addition of theater, it became so easy to actually make your own Machinima, and led to a renaissance in YouTube content in the late 2000s.
It's like a little pile over there, like 2 cubic tons.
Do you have any idea how much 2 cubic tons of sand is?
You can say what you want, but I mean, that's just my opinion.
The combination of all this probably made this the best time to be a Halo fan, even though Halo was slowly being lowered to its grave as a new champion took its cultural pedestal. But that didn't stop Halo 3 from being one of the best experiences I could have with a video game. And I'm gonna leave it with that and say definitely play Halo 3. I honestly think it's worth buying the entire Master Chief Collection just to play Halo 3. Or if you just want to play the multiplayer and are feeling really cheap, there's a program out there called Halo Online, which is a modified version of a Russian-only game that Microsoft used as an experiment to gauge interest in a PC-only Halo shooter. It's based in the Halo 3 engine, so with a few visual modifications, it basically is Halo 3. And with a mouse and keyboard, so it's not too bad. Whew, holy shit, that was part 1. This video took me way too long to make, and I'm sure the other parts will be much quicker. Once again, I'm going to split this video up into 3 parts. First we have this part, then we have part 2, Passing the Baton, where I review Halo 3 ODST and Halo Reach. Then we have the third part, Bastardization or Adaptation, where I review Halo 4 and Halo 5, and see exactly where 343 is taking the Halo franchise. And if you thought my Halo 3 section was lacking, and wanted a more in-depth view of the game, I recommend checking out Ray Sevek's video on Halo 3. In fact, I recommend checking out all of Ray Sevek's videos, because his videos are fucking amazing. Please, go watch them now. Anyways, my name's been Jobert. I promise, try and not keep you guys waiting too much for the next video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.